Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation today on healthy eating and weight loss even on a budget. My name is Monica Moore. I'm a registered dietitian and I'll be leading this seminar with you today. So a little bit about myself. I have my bachelor's degree from the University of New Hampshire and did my dietetic internship at the University of Oklahoma. I'm currently a master's student at the Applied Nutrition program at the University of New England. I am a registered and licensed dietitian. Previously, I've worked as a nutritionist specifically in weight loss counseling, but now I'm currently employed as a clinical dietitian at Southern Maine Healthcare Hospital in Biddeford, where I've been working for about 4 years. So some of the learning objectives for our project today, we're going to be talking about complications and disease risks of obesity and overweight. We'll talk about some food groups, specifically healthy selections from these food groups using the MyPlate model. We'll talk about how to read a nutrition facts label. We'll discuss food routines at home that can promote healthier eating choices, learn how to identify some of these food choices in the grocery store that are cost effective, because I know for a lot of people they'll say, healthy eating is really great. I really like to make better choices, but I can't afford it. So we'll talk about how to do that as well. And we'll come up with some objectives and some ways to really incorporate physical activity into our daily routine as well. This is the outline for today's seminar. We'll start with the introduction. Like I said, we're going to be covering MyPlate, reading nutrition facts labels and grocery store strategies. We're going to talk about budget-friendly healthy foods, those cheap things that we can afford on any budget. We're going to talk about easy changes for weight loss, restaurant strategies, and physical activity. We do have some activities that are going to be dispersed throughout these objectives today and throughout the information parts of it. So we'll stop periodically during the slideshow in order to do those activities, which we'll be doing either as a group or with your partner next to you. So as a little background, weight issues in America, 39.8% of American adults are overweight or obese. That's 93.3 million people, which is a lot of people. Obesity is considered having a BMI over 30. Overweight is considered having a BMI from 25 to 30. And in Maine alone, which is where we live, 29.1 to 34.3% of Maine adults are overweight or obese on any given year, which is really scary because that's, over a quarter of our population in the state are obese. Some of the estimated costs of obesity-related issues are $431 billion, $75 billion of that just on medical expenses related to obesity. So if we think about that, that's a lot of money that our nation is spending managing a disease and an issue that we can do things about. In addition to just obesity being dangerous for us anyway, there are some specific medical conditions that can really come out of it that people are at higher risk for if their weight is higher. So some of these things are diabetes, heart disease, certain cancers, blood pressure issues, joint or arthritis issues, sleep apnea, breathing issues. So obesity is a lot more than just being heavy. We do have a lot of really serious medical complications that can come from that. It's very important to maintain a healthy weight and eat well. These are the predictions for 2030. So as we were just talking about, diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, hypertension, obesity-related cancers, all can be a side effect of obesity, but these are the numbers that they're predicting for 2030, which is not that far away, just 11 years from now. These are the amount of cases that we're going to have. And even looking at, high blood pressure, for instance, 405,000 new cases of high blood pressure just from obesity alone. And that's really scary. Some of the limitations to healthier eating, for a lot of people, like I said earlier, I'll hear, I really want to eat better, but ... So there's lots of limitations, lots of things that hold people back. Some of it's knowledge, you just don't know what to do. You want to do the right thing, but you're just not sure what that might be. Some of it's finances, which is a lot of what we'll talk about today too, is the knowledge and the finances part. Finances being, you just can't afford it. You're on a limited income. You only get Social Security. You don't have health insurance. You don't know how to get some of the healthy foods in the store that don't cost a fortune. Transportation's another one. You don't have a car, you don't have a vehicle, you might not have a license. So getting to the grocery store can be a challenge. You kind of have to rely on public transportation, which doesn't always go past grocery stores. And you also have to be limited by what you can carry on that public transportation back. So going to the grocery store might not be a regular task. Limited access. So there's something called food deserts that we see in a lot of areas as well, where there just aren't grocery stores. And some parts of Maine definitely have that. Some parts of Maine are so secluded that most people get their food from either a restaurant, a fast food chain restaurant, or from the local convenience store like a 7-Eleven or a Wawa or gas stations, those types of stores. So there's not really always an actual grocery store around to be able to get the variety of healthy, good, inexpensive foods that other people may have access to. Social and family too is also part of it. If you have a family that is really big on food, you make great big dinners together, you have lots of family events, lots of social issues, lots of friends who really like to eat food that's not that healthy for you. You are part of a book club and they meet at Dunkin' Donuts every week. And so then there's donuts around and sugary coffee drinks. And it makes it a lot harder if you're, surrounded by people that maybe aren't also eating healthy. And then time, that's a big one that we hear too, is you don't have time to cook, you don't have time to grocery shop, you work multiple jobs. It's easier just to stop for fast food than go home and make something, especially if maybe you're not cooking for anyone but yourself. So there's lots of limitations to healthier eating, unfortunately. But today we're going to talk mostly about the knowledge. We're going to provide you some knowledge on how to eat healthier, what foods to pick, and then also how to do it on a more budget-friendly way. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the MyPlate. So MyPlate is the new My Pyramid. So I don't know if anybody's ever seen the My Pyramid in the past. It had a few different varieties of it. It was modified a few times, and most people just found it very confusing. It wasn't very helpful. But it's now become the MyPlate, which is much more user-friendly. If you look at it, it looks like a plate that you might use for a meal period. So it definitely makes it easier to grasp and easier to understand. So looking at the MyPlate, half the plate is fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate's grains, a quarter of your plate's protein, and then there's dairy there. So the recommendations this is a great way to start looking at these recommendations, because this could be an easy way to start implementing healthier food choices and changes into your family without necessarily changing everything. So for fruits, the recommendation is 1.5 to 2 cups of fruits per day. We want to ideally be choosing a variety of colors. Every colored fruit has different nutrients, different vitamins, different minerals. So it's really important to get a variety instead of just eating bananas day in and day out, trying, one day having banana, one day having apple, one day having orange, so that you're getting all those different nutrients that they carry. Vegetables, 2 to 3 cups a day is the recommendation. We want to ideally choose the same thing, a variety of colors, the rainbow, if you will. Grains, we want to ideally be picking whole grains instead of white processed grains. We're shooting for 3 to 4 ounces a day. For reference, 1 slice of bread would be considered 1 ounce. And we want to try and shoot for those whole grain, really good quality food items. So brown rice, whole wheat pasta, whole grain breads, oatmeal, quinoa. All these are really great sources of fiber for us, really good for heart health, really good for filling us up, but also much better quality than their white counterparts like the white breads, the white pastas, the white rice that offer us the same carbohydrates but don't offer us the fiber and some of those positive qualities. For protein, we want to ideally be picking lean protein, 5 to 6 ounces a day. If you're picturing it, a deck of cards is about 3 ounces worth. So that's basically 2 decks of cards worth of protein a day, size-wise, which is not that much if you think about it. And you want to ideally be picking lean proteins, such as white meat poultry, lean beef, beans, eggs, fish, seafood, really good quality stuff. It does not have to be organic, but you should still be picking the lower fat, leaner options. Around here, we do a lot of hunting. There's a lot of game meats around, like moose and deer. Those would be perfectly fine as well. And for dairy, we want to incorporate at least 3 cups of dairy a day. And it doesn't have to be milk. A lot of people say, well, I don't drink milk. I don't like milk. So therefore, they don't think this applies to them. But you can get lots of other sources of calcium other than just milk. So we want to think about things like cheeses, yogurts. If you do milk, that's fine. But we also want to make sure that these are low fat and fat free. All right, so now we're going to have some time to practice. So our first activity is going to be practicing the MyPlate. We're going to be practicing building some well-balanced meals and identifying the food groups. We're going to work with our partner next to us as well. So I'm going to take this away for just a second. So in front of you, you have a packet. On the top page, we have a MyPlate sample. It's blank. So I want you to practice filling in. I want you to put the food groups where they go and kind of show that you learned where the My Plate looks like. And then I want you to, when you finish that, flip to the next page. It has the My Plate with the food groups already filled in, so it's kind of your answer key. But underneath it, then it also has the different food groups and it has some blanks. I'd like you to try and come up with at least 3 healthy options for each food group. And this will really help you then build a healthy meal, because in theory, if you pick one option from each food group, fill it into the appropriate spots on your My Plate model, you have a nice, healthy, balanced meal. So I want you to take a few minutes to do that. This activity will take about 10 minutes. So take about 5, go through, work on this, and then I want you to turn to your neighbor, share what you came up with. If your partner came up with something like potato chips, for instance, as a vegetable option, try and identify some healthier options together. Whereas, yes, potatoes are technically a vegetable and would be in that vegetable category, it's not the best choice. So take a few minutes, work on this activity, share with your neighbor, and then we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes to learn about nutrition facts labels. All right, so now that we've had a chance to work with our partners and we did the My Plate activity, we're going to move on to nutrition facts labels. So for the nutrition facts label, how many people in here, by a show of hands, read the nutrition facts when we buy a product? Typically, not a lot of people look at these, or we look at them, but we're not quite sure exactly what we're looking for. Are we looking at calories? Are we looking at fat? What are we even looking for on this label? So a lot of people do find a lot of confusion with this. So we're going to talk about kind of the things that we should be looking for just for general health on a nutrition facts label. Of course, if you're someone that is diabetic, has heart disease, has specific medical conditions already, we might be looking for some different things, but this is just for general health and weight management. So the first thing is we want to always start with our serving size. The serving size in the nutrition facts label tells us what we're actually even looking at. So it gives us a good guideline of kind of what the numbers underneath are for. We want to look at the calories, not that we're calorie counting, but it is good to be aware, because if we're eating a food that has 800 or 900 calories and we're trying to lose weight, that's probably not the best choice. For weight loss, most women need somewhere between 15 and 1800 calories a day. Most men somewhere between 1800 and 2000 a day. So if we're eating food items that are high in calories, we're not going to be able to stay within those ranges. We want to avoid trans fat. That's really just not a great fat for us. It's terrible for our hearts. We want to be avoiding that one. So ideally, that should always say 0. For saturated fat, again, not a great heart healthy fat, so we also want to be avoiding this one. We can have a little bit, but we don't want to be having a lot. So 3 grams or less of saturated fat is usually recommended for heart health per serving. We want to limit the added sugars. So now that the nutrition facts labels have the added sugars section listed on them underneath the total sugars, it helps us identify which sugars are coming from natural sources, such as fruit, for instance, and which sugars are just kind of that added processed sugar that they're putting into something. And obviously, the higher the added sugars, the less healthy it becomes for us. We want to limit the sodium. The milligrams of sodium are really important to watch. Most of our processed and packaged foods has a lot of sodium in it. The average American only needs 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day. And if you're looking at a heart healthy diet, we're trying to go under 2,000 milligrams a day. So if you're getting sodium foods that are foods that are high in sodium, maybe up to 800 or 900 milligrams of sodium a day, or a serving for a frozen item, that's really not a great choice for us. We also want to pick foods that are higher in fiber and higher in protein. These will keep us more full and satisfied and just generally be better for our health. So that brings us to our second activity today. So we're going to take about 10-15 minutes and we're going to practice reading the food labels together as a group. So I've handed out food labels to all of you. They're on your desk in front of you. So everyone has a sample package and we're going to be reading off of these packages. And we're going to go through, we're going to do the serving size. Each person's going to present the serving size, the sodium, the saturated fat, trans fat, all those things we just talked about, the added sugars, and really to identify whether we feel like these are healthy food options or not. A lot of the foods in front of you are convenience foods, things that people typically do buy in the grocery store. So it'll give us a good opportunity to kind of really read the food labels together, go through, and as a group decide if we think that they're healthy or not. And this might help you in the grocery store, which is the next topic that we're going to be talking about. Also, we're going to identify how to determine if a food is whole grain or not, which that can be tricky as well in the food labels. So we're going to look at the ingredients list together and determine that. So if everyone wants to pick up their food labels, we're going to go around the room and start practicing.